The fluorescent panels buzzed overhead as slide 47 lit up the wall behind me. 12 faces looked back, and not one of them showed a trace of concern. I was mid-sentence, walking through how our cardiac monitoring devices were failing at a rate 17 times higher than the industry standard, when Caldwell, our chief operating officer, shoved his chair back with a deliberate screech against the marble floor. "We're done listening to her failures," he announced, not to me, to the room. His voice carried that particular resonance of a man who had never once been told no. "This presentation is a waste of valuable time that could be spent on actual business." As if choreographed, 11 other executives rose in unison. The rustle of designer suits and the snap of leather portfolios filled the space where my voice had just been. Margot, vice president of operations, paused only long enough to catch my eye. Her smile was practiced, the kind that never quite reached her eyes. "Perhaps quality assurance isn't where your talents lie, Serena. Some people simply aren't built for executive-level thinking." They moved toward the door as a single mass, 12 people who controlled billions in medical equipment sales, walking away from evidence that their products were harming patients. Not one of them looked back. Thornton, the chief financial officer, was the last to leave. He lingered in the doorway, hand finding the light switch with casual cruelty. "Don't waste paper printing this report. It goes nowhere." The room went dark. Only my laptop screen and the projection lit the space where I sat alone. 30 seconds passed. My heartbeat, which should have been racing with humiliation, slowed into something steady, something cold. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a contact I'd saved 11 weeks earlier, and pressed call. She picked up on the second ring. "They did exactly what you predicted. All 12 of them." And Caldwell specifically mentioned Tucson. A pause. "The Tucson reference is on recording. Crystal clear. Building security archives everything section 7.4 of their own policy manual. I'll have a team there in 3 hours. Don't leave the building." I ended the call and stared at the data still glowing on the wall. 437 equipment failures. 19 patient injuries. 3 deaths, chalked up to user error and buried under settlement agreements. They thought walking out was a power move. They had no idea it was the last piece of evidence I needed. Before we go further, thank you for being here. If this story's grabbing you so far, take a second to hit that like button. It helps other people find these stories about corporate accountability. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this plays out. My name is Serena. Until 14 weeks ago, I was Senior Director of Quality Assurance at one of the country's largest medical device manufacturers. Our equipment sat in operating rooms, intensive care units, and emergency departments across 43 states, the kind of devices people trust with their lives without ever knowing the name of the company behind them. I wasn't always the type to make enemies of powerful people. Growing up in a manufacturing town in eastern Ohio, I learned early that systems fail. My mother spent 22 years in quality control at a pharmaceutical plant. She once caught a contamination issue that would have affected thousands of medication doses. The company quietly fixed the problem, then eliminated her position 6 months later. No acknowledgement, no protection, just silence and a severance check. Before she passed, she told me something I've never forgotten. "The system protects itself, Serena. The only people who ever change anything are the ones willing to become inconvenient." I built my career on being thorough without being threatening. I fixed broken processes at 4 different companies without making enemies. That reputation is exactly why they recruited me. "We need someone with your particular skill set," Caldwell had said during my final interview. "Minor quality inconsistencies have developed. Fresh perspective, that's all we need. Someone who can clean things up without creating unnecessary noise." The salary offer sat 40% above market rate. The signing bonus was generous enough to feel like a statement in itself. I should have recognized it for what it actually was: payment for future silence. During my first week, I requested access to my predecessor's files. Rafael Mendez had served as quality director for 7 years before leaving abruptly, for months before I arrived. "Health issues," Caldwell explained. "Very sudden." He wasn't able to properly transition his documentation. The HR file showed a resignation letter dated a Friday, effective immediately. No 2-week notice, no transition plan, no forwarding contact. When I asked his former team about Raphael, I got rehearsed non-answers. People who'd worked alongside him for years suddenly couldn't recall his processes or his concerns. The first warning sign surfaced during my facility tour. Priya, a quality technician with 9 years at the company, walked me through the testing laboratory. Her answers felt rehearsed until we reached the cardiac monitoring assembly line. When I asked about validation protocols for sensor calibration, her eyes flicked toward a camera mounted in the corner. "We follow all established company procedures," she said, her voice suddenly tighter, more careful. I noted the camera's position and let it go without comment. The second warning sign appeared in week 3. Testing documentation for our cardiac monitors showed approval signatures on units that hadn't completed the required 72-hour stress tests. Someone was signing off on equipment that had never been properly validated. When I raised this with my team, 8 people stared at their hands in silence. No explanations, no questions. The fear in that room was suffocating. "Just follow established protocols," Caldwell instructed when I requested a meeting. "Your predecessor complicated things unnecessarily. We hired you to simplify, not create new problems." The third warning sign was impossible to explain away. 3 days after my meeting with Caldwell, $47,000 appeared in my bank account. No documentation, no explanation, no corresponding entry anywhere in the HR system. I declined the bonus through official channels, citing a processing error. The next morning, Margot appeared at my office door. "I heard there was a payroll mistake," she said, settling into my guest chair uninvited. "I wanted to personally assure you that this company values quality. We reward people who understand the importance of organizational harmony." "I appreciate that," I replied carefully. "I'm just focused on doing my job." Her smile tightened. "Of course you are. That's exactly what we're counting on." That night, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. No message, just an attachment containing 3 years of quality reports that had been altered before submission to regulatory agencies. The original version showed failure rates that would have triggered a mandatory recall. The submitted version showed rates comfortably within acceptable limits. The sender line held 6 words. He tried to tell them too. I spent the next 2 weeks mapping the full scope of what I was dealing with. The cover-up was systematic. Cardiac monitors with faulty sensors were shipping with falsified calibration certificates. Incident reports from hospitals were being intercepted and reclassified. Customer complaints were being settled with aggressive non-disclosure agreements. The Tucson incident involved a cardiac monitor failure during surgery that ended in a patient's death. Internal documents showed the company had known about the sensor defect 3 months before that surgery. They'd calculated a recall would cost $400 million and decided the math favored waiting. A man died because someone ran a cost-benefit analysis on his life. Rafael Mendez had documented all of it. His encrypted files held evidence going back 31 months. He tried escalating through the proper channels, requested meetings with the board, filed internal reports. Then he was given a choice: sign a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement, or face termination with manufactured evidence of misconduct. He signed. He disappeared. But Rafael was smarter than they realized. He'd built a dead man's switch, an automated system set to release his files if he didn't reset it every 30 days. When he stopped resetting it, the files found their way to someone who could actually act on them. Diana Reyes, senior investigator with the Federal Regulatory Agency overseeing medical device safety. She'd been building a case for 2 years, hitting dead ends at every turn. Rafael's files gave her the context, but she needed current, active documentation to make the charges stick. She needed someone on the inside. Our first call ran 47 minutes. By the end, we had a plan. Let them believe they were winning until they'd already lost. The morning of my presentation, Priya found me in the parking garage. "They know," she whispered, scanning the area for anyone watching. "Caldwell's telling everyone your report is exaggerated. There's termination paperwork already prepared. Why are you telling me this?" Her expression turned haunted. "Because I watched what they did to Rafael. He deserved better. So do the patients who trusted our equipment." She was gone before I could respond. I made one change to my presentation. I pulled the slides containing the most damning financial calculations. Those were already sitting with Diana. What remained was enough to force their hand without giving away everything I knew. After Thornton killed the lights and the executives filed out, I made the call. Diana's team arrived at 5:17 p.m. 4 federal investigators in dark suits, walking through the main lobby with a warrant to access company servers and conduct interviews. I watched from the 4th floor as the whole building transformed. Legal representatives scrambled. Executives were pulled aside for questioning. Security guards looked to their supervisors in confusion as federal badges overrode company authority. At 6:34, Margot was escorted from her office carrying a box of personal items. At 7:12, Thornton followed. Caldwell found me at 8:45. He appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of barely contained fury. "You have no idea what you've done. This company employs 11,000 people. Their livelihoods, their families, all collateral damage in your vendetta. This company's products have injured 19 people and killed 3. I replied evenly. Those were someone's families too. Those incidents were user error. Every investigation confirmed it. Every investigation was corrupted by your legal team before the findings were submitted. Diana has the original documentation. All of it." The color drained from his face. Raphael kept meticulous records. He also kept backup systems you never found. Without another word, Caldwell turned and walked away. By the following week, the fallout was visible to anyone paying attention. 9 executives faced federal charges. The company's stock dropped 53% before trading was suspended. 3 class action lawsuits were filed on behalf of affected patients and their families. Caldwell was arrested at his home at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, news cameras capturing him being led to a waiting vehicle, his face blank with the realization that power could evaporate overnight. Margot tried to negotiate immunity in exchange for testimony. The offer was rejected. The board announced a complete leadership restructuring. A victim compensation fund was established with an initial allocation of $300 million. I submitted my resignation the day after the board meeting. Sterling, the board chairman, asked me to reconsider. "We need people with your integrity to rebuild this organization. You need people who weren't forced to destroy it first," I replied. "My presence here would be a constant reminder of failure, not a foundation for recovery." He didn't push back. 3 weeks later, an unfamiliar number called. "Miss Serena? This is Dr. Whitmore, Director of Patient Safety at Northwestern Medical Center. We've been following the news about your former employer and your role in exposing what happened. I wasn't seeking publicity. I understand, but what you did is exactly the approach we need. We're launching a medical device safety initiative. We're looking for someone to lead it." I listened as he laid out a position built entirely around protecting patients from exactly the kind of negligence I'd spent months fighting. "When would you want me to start?" None of what I'd done was about revenge. It was never about watching powerful people fall. It was about a man in Tucson whose family never learned the truth behind why he died. About 19 patients whose injuries were dismissed as their own fault. About Raphael, who tried to do the right thing and was crushed for it. About Priya, who risked her career to warn a stranger because staying silent had finally become unbearable. The executives who walked out of that boardroom believed they were showing unified strength. They thought a synchronized dismissal would intimidate me into silence. They never imagined that their coordinated exit, their casual cruelty, their offhand references to past cover-ups, all captured by their own security systems, would become the centerpiece of a federal prosecution. They thought they were showing power. They were sealing their fate. If you've stuck with me through this whole story, thank you. Means more than you know. If it resonated with you, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you witnessed something similar? Have you ever had to choose between security and integrity? Subscribe if you haven't already. There are more stories to come. And remember, no amount of corporate power can withstand the weight of truth once it finally breaks free. Until next time.